When most people move abroad, they're chasing a lifestyle, a lower cost of living, more freedom, better weather. And yes, I got all those things, but the real return on investment, it didn't show up in my bank account. It showed up in who I became. There are things I gained just by living outside of the United States that money just can't buy. Now, you can earn six figures and never experience this. You can live comfortably, but never touch this. And you don't fully realize it was missing until you actually leave. So let me tell you some of the things that I gained after living in Dominican Republic for 5 years. The first thing I gained was proof that my life was mine. As you know, growing up in the United States, there's this invisible script: graduate, work, climb the corporate ladder, stress and repeat. And even if you don't love it, we stay in it because somebody told us that it made sense. But as soon as I moved to Santo Domingo, something clicked. I realized geography is optional. The script is optional. The default is optional. And that realization did something to me. It gave me proof that my life wasn't locked into a zip code or a country. Proof that I'm not obligated to follow some narrative that I didn't even write. And proof that I had the power all this time to redesign my whole environment. And that type of sovereignty can't be purchased. You'll have to experience it. You'll have to take risks. So now when I look at any part of my life that feels misaligned, I no longer feel trapped. I think, hey, if I can change countries, I can definitely change this. And this type of confidence is quiet, but yet it's very powerful. The next thing I gained was the comfort of being misunderstood. When you change your life, especially in public, you're gonna be misunderstood. People ask me, why would you leave? Is it safe? Are you running from something? What about your career? What about your stability? And at first you do feel like you have to explain everything, to justify, to defend, to try to rationalize your own decisions. But over time, something just changed within me. I stopped needing universal approval by things that I want to do. I got comfortable being the person that nobody understands. And that in itself, to me, is freeing. Because once you stop living for consensus, you start living for alignment. Because your money can buy applause, but it can't buy internal certainty. And living here has forced me to develop that type of certainty. I don't need everybody to get it. It just needs to make sense to me. And to me, that is growth. The next thing I gained was resilience through micro challenges. Living abroad is not a dramatic hardship like most people like to paint it out to be. In actuality, it's just micro friction, language mix-ups. Processes take longer than expected. You have systems that don't operate like you used to. So there are gonna be times you're gonna feel a little bit out of place. Individually, none of that is catastrophic, but collectively, it can stretch you. It builds tolerance. In the US, convenience, it cushions you from that friction. Abroad, you face friction regularly. I'm telling you, it did something to my nervous system, meaning I came less reactive, less fragile, and less dependent on perfection. I used to expect efficiency, but now I just expect variability. And I'm okay with that because resilience isn't built in comfort, it's built in adaptation. And trust me, adaptation is daily life when you change countries. Yes, money can reduce discomfort, but it cannot build resilience. That's earned. The next thing I gained was global context. When you live your entire life inside of one system, you begin to think that is the system. It starts to feel normal. It starts to feel universal. It starts to feel like the standard. And then you leave and realize the American way of living is just one way. Living here in Santo Domingo has exposed me to different definitions of success, different relationships with money, different family dynamics, and different rhythms of life. You start to see how cultural conditioning starts to shape everything. We call it ambition, but somewhere else, they may call it imbalance. What we call productivity, somewhere else, they call it stress. Global context expands your mind and you stop thinking in absolutes. You stop assuming that your framework is the default. And I'll tell you this, once your perspective expands, it never shrinks back. And listen, money can fund your travels, but it can't force you into immersion. But living in another country is definitely gonna reshape you. And another thing I gained is the ability to rebuild myself. When you move abroad, your identity resets. Nobody knows your resume. Nobody knows your past accomplishments. Nobody knows your former status. And to be honest with you, nobody cares. You have to rebuild that all from scratch, socially, professionally, and mentally. And this process teaches you something that most people would never learn. You're not your old environment. You're not your old title. You're not your old recognition, and that you can build from anywhere. And this type of realization is very powerful, and it removes the fear. Because if something collapses in one area of your life, now you understand and know how to rebuild it. And that type of self-trust is priceless. And I said this before, when I first stepped out doing remote work, I was terrified. But after I'd done it for so long, I built confidence that if something was to happen or collapse, that I know how to rebuild it again. And to expound on the point where people rest on their old accomplishments, I see it all the time. People like to talk about who they used to be, what they did. Nobody really cares about that. You're not impressing anybody when you come over here talking like that. Nobody cares where you're from, how many bodies you had. Nobody cares. This is the opportunity for you to grow up and rebuild yourself and stop resting on those past accomplishments. The next thing I gained was emotional range. Before I moved, I operated in this narrow emotional band: focus, driven, stress, busy, goal-oriented. And since living here, I've widened my emotional range. I felt awe more often, discomfort more deeply, gratitude more intentionally, and vulnerability more honestly. And don't get me wrong, yes, I have those moments of doubts, those moments of questioning, those moments of uncertainty. But at the same time, I still have those moments of stillness, those moments of clarity, and moments where I realized I was present in ways that I hadn't been before. Growth isn't constant happiness. People think because we live here that we're happy all the time, and that's just not true. When really it should be about depth, because money can amplify comfort, but it can't expand your emotional capacity. Only experience does that. So when people ask me what did I gain by moving abroad, you know what they expect me to say? Freedom, lower expenses, and better lifestyle. And yes, those things matter. But what I really gained was proof my life is mine, being comfortable, being misunderstood, resilience, global context, the ability to rebuild, and emotional range. That's wealth. And as I said in the beginning, this is not the type of wealth that's gonna show up in your bank account. This type of wealth shows up in how you move, how you think, how you respond, how you build. So if you're thinking about moving abroad, don't ask what it can give you materialistically. Ask who it might force you to become, because that's the real return. Now, if you're watching this and something in this video struck a nerve and it hit you, and you might be feeling that pull, that curiosity, that sense that maybe it might be something else outside of that default script, just understand this. It's not all about a relocation decision. It's about an identity decision. So if you're gonna make this type of move, make it strategically and not emotionally. That's why I built tools like the DR Cost of Living Calculator. So if you're trying to figure out what makes sense for you financially, join my newsletter and I will send that calculator over to your inbox. That way you can run the real numbers and see what your life will actually cost living right here in Santo Domingo or the Dominican Republic, period. Now, if you're thinking bigger, not just relocating, you're thinking long term, you're thinking ownership, building something international, then let's talk real estate. I work directly with a trusted real estate professional here who will help you invest intentionally rather than emotionally. Links are in the video description below. And until then, guys, remember, always keep your goals at the forefront of your mind. Always live in the present, because that's the only way you're gonna live your best life. And I'm out. Peace.
Je begon aan mijn best life, yeah. Je begon aan mijn best life, yeah. Something you and me, oh. Je begon aan mijn best life, yeah. Jumping, flexing, no, no.